everybody, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition Emotion. I'm so happy, I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our second workshop. I am pumped for you to experience our guest speaker later on this evening. But before we get started, I want to touch up on a couple of quick points. So you are starting your mentor relationship. That is awesome. Hopefully you've had your first conversation. I'd love to learn about it. Post maybe some of the key talking points that you've had for your first meeting in the comment section. Would love to learn about how that first meeting has gone. But yeah, this workshop's all about how to network in a genuine way and really make the most out of it. This workshop should be about an hour long. And if you've got any questions during this workshop, please post them in the comments section. As a reminder, I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Once we have asked those questions, I'll expect you to answer them. That's how you get credit for participating and being here at the workshops. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker tonight. I'm really excited to dive into this. Now, this is what's really key. I mean, genuine networking is such a pivotal component to building rapport, to getting job offers, to getting promotions. Really, if you can hone this skill, if you can hone this ability, you will be set professionally, because ultimately, at the end of the day, your hard skills, that being your ability to crunch numbers, to do some form of engineering, to do some form of science, like all those things are pretty good. They're very easy to measure. So it's very clear whether or not you are better or worse than somebody on a hard skill. But your soft skills are much more difficult to measure. But those soft skills are really what's going to set you apart. I mean, as they say, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And this is the workshop about how you can know more people and have a stronger bond with them, because then it goes to your reputation. Because if you have a reputation for treating people like garbage, you're not going to have a great reputation. People are going to want to help connect you with other people. If you come in with low energy, if you come in with a bad state, if you come in talking trash about other people, you're not going to put yourself in a good position. And so I want to be very clear. When it comes to networking, when it comes to building a relationship, it is not all about the transaction. If you're coming into a networking situation, you're thinking to yourself, what is in it for me? You are not going to have a positive outcome. I promise you on that. I really want to be clear. It's not all about landing the job or the internship. Sometimes it's about building the relationship and then playing the long game, because ultimately that may turn into an opportunity because they built a rapport with you. But if you burn them, or if you make them feel like you are using them to get to a location that you would like to be, they can smell that on you. They can smell it from a mile away. And that is not great. As they say, desperation reeks. You do not want to be desperate. You don't want to be perceived as someone that's a user or a taker. You want to be a giver. You want to be someone who gives energy to relationships. The first place to start is being genuine with how you talk to people and how you build rapport with people. Now, this is something we talked about last time, but it is so important, and that is the 3 keys to success in this program. That is honing your strategy, your story, and your state. As we've said before, your state is most important. So physically, how are you? Physically, what is going on with your world? Physically, I don't care what is happening. If you recently broke up with your significant other, if your dog just died, if you got some bad news, I don't care what's going on. If you get up, if you shake it out, if you let it loose, you will get yourself into a positive state. So I want to challenge you to do that right now. I want you to get up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it out, let it loose, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're releasing blood to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for retaining information. If you're just sitting there on a couch or in a chair in a slumped over position, your likelihood of retaining any of the information we talk about tonight is severely diminished. But if you come in standing up, moving around, getting your blood flowing, you are much more likely to retain this information. Have you ever found it difficult in a classroom setting to remember what your professor says if you've been sitting for 3 hours? That's why 3-hour lectures really struggle to work. They're not very effective because people are not moving around. Your brain needs blood to retain information. So get up, get moving, get out, get loose. Now, the second key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? I promise you right now, you will achieve up to the goals that you set for yourself in life and no higher. So you might as well shoot for the stars and land on the moon than shoot for the moon and end up in nowhere. Because if you are not focused about where you want to be, or really having a big, hairy, crazy, audacious goal for yourself, what are you doing? Like, are you just saying to yourself, like, I'm cool with winding up short, with, settling down and just settling for everything in my life? If that's the case, this program's not for you. I can tell you that right now. This program's not for you if you're trying to settle. But if you're someone that wants to go for it, if you want to go big, if you want to go out there for the opportunities that you want to see in your life, this program is absolutely for you. Let this program be a springboard. Let your mentor be a Sherpa that's guiding you up this mountain of life and success and help you get to where you want to be. This is someone who wants to guide you, that wants to help you. They wouldn't have signed up for this program if they weren't interested in seeing you succeed. So I want to be very clear with you. What is the story for why you will be successful? Understand that, hone it, be prepared. In fact, I would challenge you to write this down. Write it on a piece of paper. It's more likely to stick in your mind if you write it on a piece of paper of where you want to be. Stick it up on your wall. Stick it up on your desk. Stick it up on your dresser. Stick it up on your mirror. Something that's going to remind you of where you want to be in 1 month, 3 months, 1 year from now. That will help you set the target of where you want to go. Because if you don't set these goals, you're going to be on a path that's got really no clear outcome of where you want to go. So the last part is your strategy. What are you going to do to set yourself apart? Now, when it comes to strategies, I'm a big believer in routines. When I say routines, I mean literally getting into a daily habit that you can practice regularly so then you can be better at a skill. We think about habits sometimes in a negative light because we think about people just being addicted to bad actions, but I believe that habits can also be attributed in a positive light as well. What is a positive habit you can get into to help you build more genuine relationships? I believe one thing you can do is to be intentional about having an informational interview every single week with a new person, with a new professional in your field. You can leverage LinkedIn. You could go to a professor's office hours. You could talk to a friend of yours whose parent works in the field that you're interested in working towards, or a family friend that you know works in the field that you're interested in working towards. If you set up one informational interview every single week, and by an informational interview, I want to be very clear. This is a conversation. This isn't an interview. You're not trying to get a job from this person. You're just trying to get knowledge about what this work is like. Set up one of those a week. I can promise you they're going to start making introductions for you. They're going to start helping you get to where you want to be. By the way, if your goals change over time, that's okay. That's totally okay. You can share with them how your goals have changed, and they're going to want to keep helping you over time. I'll give you a perfect example of this. As an entrepreneur, I set goals all the time. I have a board of mentors. I literally have about 50 to 100 mentors that I send once every 3 months an update of what's going on with the business. Here's the thing though, I've pivoted this business many, many times. Now, initially when I first got started, I was thinking to myself like, oh, well, they're my mentors. Like, if I tell them that I've pivoted, will they think I'm a total failure? Will they not want to help me anymore? What I found is that is absolutely not the case. They're always there to support me. Mentors that have been with me for 5+ years still give me guidance, still help make introductions, still help me out and support me as my mission has grown, as my goals have grown. That is the nature of mentoring relationships. That is the nature of relationships in general. You should keep your network up to date with what is going on in your world because they will want to see you succeed. But the key is that you ask them for something specific. When I meet with my mentors or when I send them an email, I ask for something very, very specific. I don't say, hey, if you know anybody in XYZ space, if you could introduce me, would love that. Why? Because it's not at the top of their mind. What I'll do is I'll physically go onto their LinkedIn profile, look at who they're connected with and say, hey, I noticed that you're connected with Jane Doe, John Doe, Shelby Doe, and Jenny Doe. I know that you may not be connected with all 4 of those people, but if you are connected with one of them, would you mind introducing me? Here's an email template that you could copy and paste to introduce me. Now I've made it extremely specific and easy for them to take an action step to help me out. And that is how you can continue to grow your relationships, your network, and build rapport with people. And just keep them in the loop of what's going on in your world. So I just want to be very clear. It's about building genuine relationships. And it's about when you're building those genuine relationships and then you're asking them for introductions or connecting with more people through those relationships, being very specific and making it as easy as possible for them to help you out. I really want to stress this. It's so important. Genuine networking. If you can take anything from this whole program, if it's genuine networking, and by genuine networking, I mean really listening, taking an active and keen interest in who you are speaking with, you are going to be set. You're going to be in a great position. Because at the end of the day, it's not your elevator pitch. It's not going to be anything about you that makes someone interested in you. It's going to be about your ability to listen to them. In fact, I can tell you multiple times where I didn't say a word in a conversation. I just nodded my head yes and asked questions about things that somebody else has said. And at the end of the conversation, whether that be 30 minutes or 60 minutes long, they said, man, Garrett, you are such a great conversationalist. Or, gosh, I feel like I just had such a great conversation with you. And the funniest thing about it is I didn't actually say a word. The point is this: people love to talk about themselves Why? Because people are really interested in things that they're interested in. People wouldn't choose to spend the time that they have on this earth in the way that they did unless they thought it was the most optimum way of spending their time. Therefore, things that interest them, things that they choose to spend their time on, are things that interest them and ultimately make you interesting to them because you've taken an interest in those actions and activities. I hope that makes sense. If you want to rewatch that, take that back 30 seconds because I think it's really important. People, ultimately, at the end of the day, people care about themselves. People care about things that they are interested in because they've chosen to spend the time that they have on those tasks. So with that said, I'm excited to jump in to our guest speaker this evening. Really, the whole point of this workshop is about genuine networking. If you've got any questions for myself or for our guest speaker, please post them in the comments section. By the way, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'll add you to our LinkedIn group where we discuss different topics and you can add different topics, ask any questions, and expand us to our entire Ambition in Motion network. Connect with me. I'll add you to the group. But yeah, I'm so excited to get started. Let's jump into our guest speaker this evening. Welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into this topic of how to network in a genuine way. We're in this really weird world right now with COVID and coronavirus. We have to think about networking in a lot of different ways, and unfortunately, it can be perceived as very transactional for only connecting online. But we've got an incredible guest here this evening to help us talk about how we can network in a genuine way. We've got Devin Zilmer with us. Devin is a recovering introvert. He's an engineer by day, speaker by night, and a major student advocate. Devin is the co-founder of the More Than movement, where he empowers students to strive for more than the box they may have been labeled with. Devin, thanks for being here.
Hey, Gary, appreciate you having me on, man. I know you and I have had a conversation in the past and just really looking forward to diving in today and sharing more.
Yeah, so I'd love to, I guess maybe to get started, I'd love to learn your story. I mean, you're relatively young, and I know a lot of obviously students are pretty young watching this, and you're an engineer as well. I'd love to learn your story of why you chose engineering and why you're so passionate about empowering students who might feel like they're introverted, get out of that label of well, that means I can't network. That means I can't get my foot in the door. That means I can't put myself out there. How did you go about, when did you realize this, and how did you go about overcoming this and putting yourself on the right track?
Yeah, honestly, it's obviously a long-winded question and a long-winded answer too that's coming. But I think at the end of the day, for me, when it came to engineering, I always was kind of a tinkerer, and I was good at math and science. And as far as finding the path, to be honest, it found me more than I found the engineering path. And the reason for that is because I didn't even apply to school when I went. And I wrote this in an article on LinkedIn. But the reason why is because I didn't necessarily know what I wanted. My only focus at that point in time was to play baseball. So I go towards MSOE, which is in Milwaukee. I'm from the Milwaukee area. And as a function of going to MSOE, it's just a very, very academic culture. And I started to get into it, and I started to get better and better at school and enjoying it more. And eventually engineering, actually, I'm very fortunate, it worked out well for me. But yeah, and I started enjoying the path. But I think one of my frustration points early in undergrad was just the ability to network and just be having good conversations, being open to go walking to a networking event and going up to introduce myself. That was super uncomfortable for me. But I think what I was really frustrated with is I thought that I was fixed in my circumstances and in the person I was. I thought that my introvertedness, I thought that I couldn't be an extrovert or be more extroverted or have those conversations, be the outgoing one. And the only way I could figure that out for myself was to go through the process of becoming more extroverted. And once I figured out that you could actually work on your skills, your networking skills, once you could figure out how to be more outgoing, build that confidence to have that conversation that you're really scared of. Once I figured that out and figured out it's more of a process of becoming, I got super passionate about, hey, being in engineering school, and I can speak for other engineers, we know other people that are introverted, right? So it's I wanted to get back to that space and just figure out, hey, how could I transcend that or help other people realize the same thing, and try to become more of an extrovert than they are today.
That's a really fascinating point. I think a lot of students that are in this program can relate to that sentiment, because I think that there's a lot of things that go on in your head, because we tend to go to college, we pursue a degree path because we think it's pragmatic or our parents would like it or that we're interested in a class that leads down this degree path. And there's so much conditioning and other BS that comes with it. There's a lot of assumptions that we have about who we think a person is or who we think a type of person is based on what they've chosen to do for their career or for their college degree path. And it sounds like from what you're saying is you're almost pulling back that peel of like, hey, just because I'm an engineer does not mean I need to be an introvert. Or just because I am doing something that, maybe traditionally is viewed as, I don't need to be a networker. I don't need to put myself out there because my grades and my academic achievements should be able to carry me to landing a job, making a bunch of money. And therefore, I don't even need to work out that muscle that I have of that being building relationships. And I think what you've identified really well is that it doesn't necessarily need to be that way, but two, and probably more importantly, is that networking is a skill, like shooting a basketball or knitting a quilt. The more you practice it, the better you get. And it's not something that you're born with, it's something you work towards. Is that correct?
Yeah, like 100%. Like any sort of skill set you're going to build in life, like think about this. You grew up, you were a toddler at one point, you learned how to walk. You didn't necessarily have that skill at birth, right? The same thing with your introverted tendencies. Those came from somewhere and you can build the skills to get out of that. Any skill set you want to build, you can do. Now, obviously, there's going to be more people more gifted. Like LeBron James is going to be way more gifted than I am at playing basketball. However, if I put in the amount of work that LeBron put in over the course of how many years LeBron has been putting in work, right? I'm pretty sure I could be pretty good at basketball. So I've just got to become obsessed with this idea of like, I can do anything I want if I'm willing to put the effort and energy it is to learning the skill.
That's a really powerful statement you make. It makes you think about the power of routines, because ultimately, as humans, we don't become great at something overnight, whether it's physically working out or networking or playing basketball or anything that you like to become better at. It's not something you try really hard one time and then you just kind of give up on it. It's the routine of doing something little every single day. I was reading this book called Atomic Habits, and they talk about this notion that if you can do just a little bit, but consistently, you will have and achieve exponential results. And you can't create habits for everything, but there are a lot of things you can create habits for. And if networking is that important to you, which I think it should be important to everybody, because ultimately it will be the key that helps us get to where we want to go. You can ultimately get to where you'd like to be and be in control of that. You don't have to ever feel stuck in a career or in a situation and because you don't feel like you possess the resources within yourself and the resourcefulness within yourself to get to where you'd like to go. It makes you think. I know that there's a lot of students, and it's almost funny. It's like the counteraction of, like, let's say there's a lot of students that say, hey, I'm an introvert. I don't want to be extroverted. So I'm going to only as minimally put myself out there as I possibly can. And what ends up happening is they end up coming off really transactional. Like they only go to a hiring manager and they say, hey, do you have a job that I could get? If not, don't talk to me anymore. And I don't know, what is your experience with that, Devin? And it's, I think the funny observation I have from that is it seems like that's the opposite of what the student wanted to come off as, but it ended up becoming off as like, this only person's trying to use me. What is your experience with that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think I've seen it many times, and I'm sure you can attest this too, is it's like we have a tendency as a society to like want to get in the world and want to get things, right? Whether that's a job, whether that's money, whatever that is, right? What could cater that to kind of your experience. But personally, like what I realize is you have to meet somebody at ground level and like build a relationship there if you expect it to actually foster something. And at the end of the day, I've always fell in love with this statement that don't burn a bridge that you have to potentially cross again, right? You may have a conversation with that recruiter. It may not go well. It may not go anywhere, right? But if you built a relationship, I can promise you at some point that may come around, right? If you genuinely build a relationship. And that's just something I've fallen in love with, because at the end of the day, I know, there's a saying, I love sayings, right? You're going to hear this multiple times, but the only thing that's true about a job is someday you won't have it, right? And it's tough to say it like that, but hey, maybe you have a job the first 2 years of your career and something happens, you have to move on, or maybe you just need to make a career move. Now that relationship you built with that recruiter 2 to 3 years ago, that can come back into the fold, and you can find a role through it. So I've definitely seen transactional. I know, like, just think about me as a person. Like, I love it when people actually go to discover me and get to know who I am, right? As I'm sure everybody else does, right? And if you can give that favor to somebody, they're immediately going to remember you, right? I know anytime somebody actually takes that level of interest in me, I immediately remember their name, right? As opposed to somebody who's transactional. So to ask yourself, do you want to be remembered, or you just want to get that role, right?
Totally. And I guess, why is transactional networking bad?
Yeah. Because you're just not building relationships, and humans run this world, and at some point you're gonna have to have enough relationships to create new opportunities or whatnot. And at the end of the day, you want to build those relationships. You really want to have those personal connections. And I mean, I could go on a tangent about this, but more or less, transactional networking just isn't gonna get you anywhere in the long run, more or less. It really just won't. You gotta, even in your job that you're working today, like in my job, like I just like to have a casual conversation every once in a while with a coworker to get them to know them on a personal level. Because then what happens is, this is just within the workplace, is like, hey, if I need a favor and I built a relationship there, like I can promise you I can probably go there because that relationship's built and go get a favor or something like that. So.
And not only that, but I believe the statistic was that 70% of all jobs go to somebody who was referred by somebody else.
Yeah.
So there's power in networking, because I would imagine there's a lot of students that might think to themselves, well, shoot, my goal is to land a job. My goal is to land this internship. I don't want to waste my time or spin my wheels with someone who doesn't have any influence over me getting that job or internship. And what they may be neglecting is that there's a ton of power in the relationships you have. And I think that's what you're saying, is that build these bonds genuinely, and they may end up turning into something later on. And at minimum, maybe another way of putting it is, if you can eradicate your expectation and just only focus on the appreciation of that relationship, you're going to be infinitely happier. If you come in with an expectation that someone needs to give something to you, that is going to set you up for failure and set you up to be let down. But if you come into that relationship thinking to yourself, you know what? I'm here to be open-minded, build a bond with somebody new, and expand my friend base. And if something else comes of it, incredible. But if not, that's okay. That, I think, is a baseline for genuine networking. Would you say that?
Yeah, 100%. You said it beautifully. It's like, if you have expectations, at some point, we're all human. We're going to screw up. You know what I mean? At some point, we're going to screw up that relationship, or the other person may screw it up. But if you go in with no expectations and you go in with this giving mentality, at some point, if they do let you down, you'll be understanding of it. You'll still keep the relationship. Again, that bridge will not be burned, so you can still cross it, right? So I 100% agree with that. I love how you said that. Like, having no expectations going in is so huge.
So how has your network influenced your career trajectory?
Yeah, good question. So just as like a background, my first internship when I was a freshman in college, and I think the general gist of freshmen getting internships is not often, right? And to be honest, I kind of was planning on working for my dad's company at that point in time. And, I have a good friend who his parents own a tree farm out here in Wisconsin. Went and worked at the tree farm, and I was talking to his dad, and his dad worked at an engineering company, right? They did some die casting. So we were having a casual conversation. He's like, yeah, how's like your internship hunt coming along? And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of fizzled out. It's not much going on with freshman year. He's like, well, hey, like I may be able to get you a foot in the door. I'm like, okay. Like, and him and I, like, we don't talk often, right? It was like this casual encounter. And I was like, yeah, that's really great. That'd be really awesome. So we go in and get the interview and end up getting the role, right? And that internship led to my next internship, which led to my job today. So if I wouldn't have had that network, that connection, and actually leveraged the network or just accessed it, more or less, right? Where would I be today? Hard to say. I have no idea if that role would have lined up to get me to the job I have today.
I think one of the biggest things I'm taking away from that story is the fact that you peeled away the BS of the conditioning that you had that freshmen don't get internships. Yep. You had this notion in your mind, freshmen don't get internships. And I would imagine there are some students that use that as a self-limiting belief about whether or not they think they can or cannot achieve an internship. And because of that, you're almost to a point where you're like, you know what? If I don't get an internship, I'll just work for my dad's company. And fortunately, you had someone that believed in you and gave you that chance, because it's not necessarily about your age. It is about your potential. And that's what people are investing in. And if we can start eradicating these negative beliefs about what we think is realistic for us, we can start to really accomplish things that have never been accomplished before, or achieve the things that maybe we never realized were possible.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, you know, because it's like, at the end of the day, if we put those, again, your self-limiting beliefs, they're just going to stop you. I'm, again, coming back to the idea that you can kind of do anything if you're willing to, you know, seek the guidance or seek the help you need, right? Like, again, if I wouldn't have had that opportunity, I have no idea where my career would be today. And it was because I peeled back that layer, and it still was there to some degree. Like, there was still some doubt and disbelief when I went through the interview process, but as a function of that, like, I realized later, it's like, well, what if I would have carried that same doubt into sophomore year, right? And then what if I didn't get an internship at that time and carried that down to junior year? So it's like, start in the front end and then believe on the potential of it for sure.
Yeah, it just created a rolling spinball effect from there.
Yep.
Of potentially negative beliefs. And so I think that's a really powerful thing that you mentioned. What is your why? Like, why do you do what you do? Like, you could have just been an engineer who does his work and goes home and that's just it. But you're an engineer who speaks to help incorporate other introverted, specifically students, to break out of their box, break out of their thing that's holding them back. Why? Why is that something you're passionate about?
Yeah. I think a couple things in there, and it's peeling back the onions here, right? But yeah, no, I think my frustration point and just understanding that, like, at one point in time, I didn't believe that I could be extroverted, and I was bullied, and I didn't think that it was possible for me, was just very frustrating. You know, I was kind of in like a dark hole. I don't know if you want to call it depression, but like, I was pretty torn up about it because I didn't think I was capable of transcending that. Once I started to figure out that, if you pursue personal growth, you pursue skill sets, pursue learning, right, that you can transcend that. Like, I just want to give back to that. And then another big why of mine is because, you know, again, I could just be an engineer. I'd probably be doing all right in life. However, it's like, we only get one shot at this sucker. Like, I want to make it count. And, you know, you see, we lost Kobe this year, and it's just like, Kobe did so much with the time on planet Earth, you know, and why do we remember him? And I don't know if I'll be able to remember that level, but can I like strive for that and make some sort of difference in the action? Absolutely. And then a big function of that is, like, I'm the oldest of 5 boys. So for me, I've always looked at myself as setting an example for them. So I didn't want to be just the guy that went straight to school, got good grades, and then got a job, and that was it. Like, I wanted to do more in life. I want to give an impact. I want them to see that and to have an example for them, because I just think it would be really cool to have them, you know, either with me on the journey or help, or like doing something cool with them, like a project in the future. But first, I got to lay the foundation for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you being vulnerable. I think that's so powerful. So it makes me think of a question I want to ask the students in the audience, and that is, what is your why? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn. What is your reason for being? Maybe you haven't thought about it this much. Maybe you're 18 years old, 19 years old. You're just getting started in college. Maybe you're a little more established. Either way, you can have a why. And even if you're coming up with that on the spot, it's a starting point. Having an intention about what you want to achieve with your life and your career is critical. Post in the comment section, what is your why? I'd love to learn about that. So let's talk more about genuine networking, Devin. I want to learn, I guess really the first question is, are people genuinely helpful? In your experience, have people genuinely been helpful for you? I think a big fear a lot of students have is rejection. What if they say no? What if I put myself out there and they totally reject me? And we build up a lot of this anxiety about the unknown of what might happen. In your experience, are people genuinely helpful?
Yeah, I think absolutely. However, it only happens when you take genuine interest in them first, right? That is the key. If you don't take genuine interest in somebody, you can't expect them to come back and want to add value to you. You know, I can just think of so many scenarios where, like, again, like, put yourself in the other person's shoes and wanting to give to you. Like, will they want to give to you if you're transactional, or will they want to give to you if you actually build a relationship? And I'm willing to bet you're going to say it's because you built a relationship. So I'm just thinking of all the relationships I built in my life and the things that have come from it. And every one has just meant me taking genuine interest in them, their family life. You know, genuine interest to me is like take interest in like beyond the title, beyond, you know, academics for students, right? Like take interest and you're like, yeah, like how's your family doing? Like how's life? Like, well, how are you feeling about COVID right now, right? Have empathy. Deploy empathy is so huge to really develop that sort of relationship so that at some point, you know, I'm just a believer that at some point, if I give, at some point it will come around. Maybe not in the proportion that I gave, but it will come around. And in due time, right?
Yeah, let's rewind that real quick. If you're watching the recording of this, rewind this by like 1 minute. Re-listen to what Devin just said. People are not going to take a genuine interest in you until you take a genuine interest in them. But I think the big caveat is you got to put yourself out there first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're a student and you're like, well, I've got like 20 connections, I don't know anybody or whatever, who cares? Put yourself out there to people in your industry. If you want to work for Apple, Google, Snapchat, a major any major company, an investment bank, whatever, if you want to work for a company that you have great aspirations towards working towards and with, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to reach out. And it's not just one person. You reach out to everybody because at the end of the day, you don't know who's going to be willing to accept your LinkedIn connection request. Right now, we're in a virtual world. Your email may just go to their spam folder, but your LinkedIn connection request will come through. Now, some people don't check their LinkedIn as much as others, but if you can get someone on the phone with you, that's huge. Now, the next step is to be genuine. So, Devin, what is your advice for what are some engaging questions that you like to ask to help build a genuine relationship with something?
Totally. And before I get to that, I do want to hit on one thing that you talked about is failure, right? We need to redefine failure because I'm not a big believer that failure exists, to be honest. My belief is that if you're quote unquote failure, it's just an opportunity for you to learn and improve, right? So if you had quote unquote failed at networking and did not get the job you want, learn from it, get some takeaways from it and improve from there. Now, genuine questions that you could ask, you know, is just really like, I mean, you've got to start it somewhere. So you may have to start a little bit surface level, right? So let's just say you're at a career fair. I'm just thinking about the career fairs that I've gone to in the past 3 years. And, you know, just one, start by taking interest in the company, talking to them. How is your role going there, right? How has that complemented your life beyond your work, right? You know, how is this job like getting you to where you want to go in life? Like talk about future focused stuff too. Because if you want a genuine network, like you can talk about the past, but a lot of people are more excited about where they're headed in the future, right? And if you can ask them, especially the ambitious people that you probably want to talk to and really have good conversations with, right? Is if you ask them, hey, like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And then really dive into that. And if they say something personal, touch on it. You have to touch on it. Because like some people will say something passing, like I said something about my brothers. And Garrett, you could have chosen not to say anything about it, right? But you said, hey, I appreciate you being vulnerable, right? Like that right there, you touched it. I noticed that right away. I was like, wow, he noticed that. Other people feel the same way. If they mention something personal, touch on that. Maybe ask about it. Go a layer deeper.
I was just about to jump into that even more. I think there's a ton of power in vulnerability. Now, most people may not be vulnerable at first. It might require you to be vulnerable first. I know that I've shared my story with all the students here about me being a drug dealer and just essentially transitioning my life from being a drug dealer to what I'm doing today. There's power in vulnerability. Mm-hmm. When you are the first person to be vulnerable in a conversation, you are putting yourself out there to not only be judged, yes, but accept it. Because that is what makes people trust you. Vulnerability is the recipe for trust. And man, I love what you were talking about in terms of failure, because I think you're right. I do think the only failure is giving up. Failure is literally just saying, you know what, I'm not going to do it anymore. I remember, I'll give an example of a recent failure. I am hiring for a role at Ambition in Motion, and there is a person working for another company that I think would be a great fit for this role. So essentially, I'm kind of in this position of kind of potentially trying to poach this person. I'll be honest. I'll be transparent. I'm like, I would love to hire you. You're working at a different company, but I would love to work with you. First conversation that I ever had about it was awkward. I was horrible. I crashed and burned. It was weird. I didn't feel comfortable. I'd never had a conversation like that before in my life. But I overcame it, and I eventually had another conversation with another person who worked for a different company, and went way better. But I leveraged that failure of just totally socially crashing and burning, not practicing the best things, not being the best as I possibly can be, and learning from it and realizing that it was a learning experience. And so the point I guess I'm making is that it's okay to fail socially. Like if your first networking experience you feel like is flawless, you are waiting way too long. I think Neil or Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn had this saying, if you are not embarrassed by what you put out 90 days after putting it out, you release too late. I think the same goes true for networking. If you are not embarrassed by your initial conversations in networking, you are waiting too long to start networking.
Yeah, 100%. I think I just want to touch on that 1 second here.
Yeah, jump in.
Don't take yourself too seriously at the end of the day, right? You're gonna screw up. You're gonna do things. Laugh at it so that you can learn from it and move on, right? I'm just thinking of all the times I screwed up. I mean, my wife and I, we played golf this past weekend. For background, I started playing golf 4 weeks ago, and we decided to play 9 holes on our little honeymoon getaway, and it was atrocious. I think we used one of my drives the whole time. And I'm working on my game, but she used the other 8 holes. She would use her drives because we were playing best ball. But I could choose to look at that and take myself seriously. Like, man, you suck at golf. But it's just laugh at it. Laugh at how many balls I lost in the trees, and move on so I can learn from it. Right. At the end of the day, you don't was it Wayne Gretzky? You miss 1,000 of shots you don't take, or whatever shots you don't take. Right. Same thing here. If you don't network just because of the fear of it or your fear of that failure, you're not going to hit on any of those shots.
Totally. Let's talk about another point relevant to networking and just building genuine relationships. And I know that we're probably going to be doing the majority of our networking virtually for the foreseeable future. But does body language matter?
110%. It's the majority of your communication, to be honest. Like your body language and something is something that people notice. Like how attentive are you? Are you like leaning forward into the camera, especially because we're virtual now, right? Are you leaning forward? Are you smiling along the way? Like those things matter. And a lot of people will notice that more than your actual words, your tonality, right? Super big too. But yeah, body language is huge. I mean, I just think of all the conversations and things that I've said. And if I just lean in a little bit, how much more dynamic that makes the conversation, or it's just, yeah, there's so many points here that I can make, but 100%.
Well, and then it goes into other components of networking, that being lighting, that being where you're currently doing it at. Do you have like a circus going on behind you? Do you have like dogs and cats and kids running around like crazy? Or like friends of yours who are like, drinking beers in a fraternity house or something like that? Or are you in a professional setting? I mean, obviously maybe you're not in a fraternity house right now because of COVID, but the point I'm making is like, what does your setting look like? How does that set the stage? If people build trust in the eyes. And so if people can't see your eyes, it's very difficult for them to trust you. I think the research shows that people build trust both in the eyes and in the hands. So if they can't see your hands, I think back to our Homo sapien days as like cave people, like if you didn't see somebody's hands, the assumption was that you had something behind your back and that you were going to leverage that to steal something from me. And we inherently have these instincts that tell us if we can't see someone's hands, we can't trust them. And so if you can use your hands more in a video, if you can show your eyes and have clear lighting on your face, that is really critical towards building trust with somebody. So I'd love to ask you, Devin, a couple more questions. Let's talk about introductions, especially right now when we may not know many people. We might know just a couple of people. We're starting to build relationships. Is it okay to ask for introductions? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I think, again, coming back to it, build the relationship a little bit first. And yeah, and like, again, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So if you really want an introduction to somebody, build the relationship and then just ask like, hey, like something I realized, like, let's say I wanted another engineering role in a different company, right? Had a relationship. I say, hey, like XYZ, like get to know them a little bit. And after a while, we built a relationship. And I say, hey, one of the things that I've noticed is that I really start to like the company you're working at, and I can see myself there. I don't know necessarily how I would get there. But I was wondering if you had any potential connections with upper level management that I could potentially get my resume to. All right. Or if this is an internship, do you know anybody that I can potentially get my resume to? I just really see myself as a good fit here. And I think I could be a value add to your company. right?
Maybe you could even just be chatting about the role. I'd love to learn a little bit more about this role. A lot of companies will have referral bonuses. So if you express interest and that you're genuinely curious about what is going on at this other company, that could be your way in. So I guess a question I'd love to ask the students right now is, what is a new strategy you're going to leverage to help you get your foot in the door, and how you're going to genuinely network with other professionals in your field of interest starting tonight? Starting tonight, what are you going to commit to? Because we talked about small routines earlier. What is something you're going to commit to doing towards helping you expand your network and starting to build strong relationships? Post in the comment section. Would love to learn about that. So, Devin, a couple other questions I had was note taking. Do you take notes when you meet with other people?
Depends on the conversation. If I know it's going to be super informational, I'll try to bring, and the expectation is that there's going to be able to take notes for sure. But if it's like one-on-one, this is just my personal, like how I network is, I'm a pretty observational person. Then I come up with questions and stuff later. That's just kind of how my brain works. But yeah, if there's like an information session where like I know I can go there and take notes, 100%, right? Now the power is like, hey, don't take notes to take notes. Go back, maybe highlight 2 or 3 things, because here's the thing is like, even if you go to a networking event, right, and there's a speaker, let's say a speaker comes in, gives you 15, 20 bullet points. You're not going to be able to do all 20. It's not going to happen. Every year at New Year's, we spend all the time creating new resolutions, and every year we joke about how many of those don't happen. The reason is because people are building so many of them into their lives. Just pick 1 or 2 that you can actually act on in the next month, and I think that's where the power comes in from the notes.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I think the other key caveat with notes is it helps you show people that you're actively listening. Yes. Yeah, you don't have to take down all 20 notes of bullets of things that they've said, but if you're like, hey, this is something that really stood out to me. I really enjoyed you talking about this thing, and this thing. That helps them know that you were paying attention and that you actually cared. And yeah, they may correct you. Yeah, they may say, well, you actually didn't have that one down right. That's okay, because it shows that you were really intentionally listening, where a lot of people may not be intentionally listening or not necessarily convey that they're intentionally listening. So I think there's a lot of power in note-taking there. One other question I had was, and this is kind of a meta question, but how would you describe a successful person? Just in general, just a successful person. Because I think so often we have these visions of grandeur of like what people look like on LinkedIn or what we think people need to look like. But what would you define a successful person as?
Yeah, you're right. It's a very big question. But at the same time, like it should be fairly simple, because if you want to find, like most people that live in or have success in life, their own version of it, live simplistically. Now, I don't see like some aspect of it is wealth, but I think a lot of it comes from just having really great relationships and living out your life by your values. I think what I see as successful. Like the most happy people that I've met in life, they live by their values. They make decisions that align with where they want to go. And if you can find, that's the people that I see as successful, right? I don't see myself being Elon Musk or being some super successful guy. I mean, it would be cool, right? But to me, success is just living out my family values, living out values with my wife, and how we want to live someday, giving back, helping other people fix their introversion. Like to me, that's success, and how many people I can help in life. But yeah, I just think if you see people living out their values, for me, that was always something that really attracted me, because I was like, man, they're saying what they speak. And like meeting people on LinkedIn, I've met some people who don't necessarily match their profiles. I've met some people that really match their profiles. And I have a lot of respect for the people that, are transparent and they're exactly who they say they are on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Devin, that makes me think of one last question I want to ask the students is, what makes you happy? Post in the comments section. What makes you happy, and how can you essentially sustain a life? What is your plan for how you can sustain a life where you continually can get the things that make you happy? So it's a 2-part question. What makes you happy, and what is your plan to ensure that that is part of your decision-making and value system as you continue to grow your professional path and your college path? Because I think that's so critical. I think the way people become disengaged, the way people become unhappy is because they lose their path. They forget what makes them happy. They've got all these preconceived notions about what they think should make them happy based on the conditioning we've received since we were children. And we forget that it's individual and that it's different. And what makes me happy because of who I am does not necessarily mean it'll make someone else happy because of who they are. And so I think it's important that we identify what makes us happy and our individuality, and that we're intentionally focused about it. And I think by putting it out there into the ether and by making comments and sharing it in the comment section, I think it helps show that it's okay to have a different viewpoint of what makes you happy. Cool. Well, Devin, this has been a really good workshop. I really enjoyed learning your perspective about networking in a genuine way. The final question I have for you is, how can our audience learn more about you and your work and connect with you?
Yeah, for me, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and just reading through some of the content stuff I have on there. Always open to network. You know, if you need any tips around networking and again, networking in a genuine way, happy to help there. And I mean, Instagram is something, but that's just more of like personal life. Hey, we post about what things we're doing on our daily lives, my wife and I. But LinkedIn's the main place for me.
Awesome. And well, maybe you don't know, all of our students are building LinkedIn's right now. So if they don't have one, they should have one by now. And yeah, connect with Devin. Let him know what you're working on. He's interested. He cares. Everybody, thank you all for being here. This was an awesome workshop on networking in a genuine way. Devin, thank you for being here. Everybody, I look forward to seeing you at our next workshop. I hope you have a great next month of mentoring with your mentor. Have a good rest of your night. See ya.